I want to share with you one of the very best ways to get water in very difficult times. Hey everybody, Chad Cruiser here with Health and Homestead, and I'm here with my good friend Frank Cohen, and we're out on his property, and he has a system, a water system, that could work even in potentially some of the very worst of times. And we were just talking about it, and you know, certain things can happen. You could have let's say you have municipal water, the electricity goes out, or something happens and the water system isn't working from the city. Well, you can't get water. It could be that you have your own solar system, but you have tornadoes, you have, hurricanes, you have trees that fall down, things happen, and maybe your solar goes out, or your batteries die, or your charger dies. I mean, there's so many different things that could go wrong, and in the end, you want to make sure that your family has water, but there's even other things. We were just talking about something. What was that, Frank?
Well, not too far from here, actually, in Oldsmar, Florida, which is less than an hour from where we live, hackers were able to hack into the municipal water supply, and they were releasing a sodium hydroxide, which is a lye that they used to treat the water, and they managed to be able to access the control system for that. And luckily, it was caught before it became a crisis, but the goal, it appeared to be that they were going to release large amounts of it into the water, and that's a deadly poison.
Wow.
In large amounts. So, you never know.
Yeah.
And perfect timing as our well comes on now. Let me check our pressure. It's good. Yep.
And, these are just the kind of things that the times that we're living in, there's nefarious individuals, and then there's just
natural disasters. Look at Texas. As we're talking right now, I have a friend that lives just outside of Dallas, and they were without water for days, and many people there, the pipes are burst, or the electricity's out, or they're telling them to boil the water because it's not even safe, the water coming from the municipal water supplies, because they haven't had electricity. They can't treat the water appropriately.
I know we had talked about it too, that some people are getting bills for their electricity, $8,000 when it was
I just read one guy got it for $17,000. The electrical we pay about 11.5 cents, I think, per kilowatt hour here. And because I don't really understand the financial part of it, but it has to do with some type of a variable market rate basis. And because of what happened, they went to $9 per kilowatt hour.
That's crazy.
It was just insane. So the guy gets a bill for $17,000, and they said, "Well, we'll set up a payment plan with you. Not that we're going to forgive it, or."
Yeah, just absolutely crazy. And these are the kind of things. Another reason to have your own water system,
Yep.
to be able to heat your family if you live in a cold enough region that you need it. Most of the time the normal system works, but when it breaks down, it's a nightmare.
It is.
It's literally a nightmare. So let's talk about the system that you have here, Frank. I know you had a well. It was pre-installed. It was here when you got here, right?
So we moved in, and the well was in. It's about 90 feet deep.
Okay.
It's got a 2-horsepower submersible pump in it, and I believe a 37-gallon.
62
gallon.
62,
right,
yep.
Gallon reservoir.
Yep.
That holds the water in it.
That's the pressure tank there.
Yep, and what that does, that just prevents the well from having to pump every single time the water's on. So it fills that with 30 gallons, 20 gallons of water under pressure, and usually our pressure here runs around 50 pounds per square inch.
Okay.
So it's more than enough to satisfy our needs, and we use it for watering the yard too. So
Yeah.
on this system, I think our capacity is around 33 gallons per minute is what we're able to get out of this.
Okay.
So we can water other parts. We have the gardens in the back.
Which is quite a bit. Which is a good flowing. I mean, you got plenty of water underground here.
I have a friend who lives out west, and he's got a well. He gets 3 gallons per minute.
Yep.
Praise God, he said.
Yeah.
Because we're getting some water.
Yeah, that's the way it is. That's the way it is in a lot of areas, and a lot of times they have a tank that they'll shoot it into, so that they can always have water on hand. Whereas,
and we're very fortunate because we have the aquifer running through here, And I mean, at some point when you come back next time, we're going to have a rain collection system in the back as well, which will be more convenient if we have to run water to the gardens and we don't have water.
And there's nothing like rainwater beats out well water when it comes to water in your garden. There's no question about it. And so this well was drilled, like we said, when you got here, but then you wanted to have redundancy.
Yep.
And so you did you call your well company or a well company, or how did that work?
We waited for a while. We have a generator, a 22 kilowatt generator that runs the whole house. So And we had to use this when Irma came through, Hurricane Irma. We were without power for about 3.5 days.
Okay.
But the generator picks up And we have about 11 days worth of fuel that we could run on that. But, you know, you don't want to run it all the time. We don't have solar set up. So if you have some type of a grid failure, for example, again, in Texas, they said had they not responded when they did, the grid could have been down for months.
Wow.
And water is just such an essential part of everything we need. So we started doing some exploration, some investigation into getting a hand pump for the well.
Yeah.
And at first, people discouraged us. We called pump companies, well companies. Oh, you don't need that. They said, you know, you're fine. And we're like, oh, okay. And then eventually, no, that's not going to work.
Yeah, we had the same thing. People think you're crazy because they it's not worth the money. And in a sense, it's like insurance. Really, most of the time, insurance is not worth the money.
Nope.
But do you just not get it because it's not worth the money?
I mean, life insurance only works once.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much,
so you can say, why get it? That's ridiculous. But the point is, when you do need it, that's what makes insurance worthwhile, and that's what this is right here.
That's right.
This is.
This is insurance for us, with a critical piece of our infrastructure.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have water, you got to move.
That's right.
Just
That's right.
It is,
yep. And I think when it comes to natural resources, when it comes to resources on your land or your homestead, the water of life is number one, having a relationship with God. But number two is this water. Yep. I mean, natural water is, you can live many days, even weeks without food.
Yep.
But obviously air, you can only last minutes. You know, but when it comes to water, all you've got is days.
That's it.
And
3 days, they say.
That's right. And you're going to be dependent on other people if you don't have access to water. And that's what's so important. And this, you can be an anchor person in your community because you may be able to help others at the same time if, you know, times get difficult.
That's right. And, you know, when Irma came, that's what happened here. We had 22 people staying at our house.
Wow.
During Irma, and all the neighbors who were out of power, because we had the generator, they would bring their phones over to charge. They would come and use our shower, or if they had to do laundry or something like that. So yes, and it's a great ministry almost.
It is.
You know?
That's
in times of crisis is when people become the most afraid, and they want. I think it was Zig Ziglar once. I dropped names, but he said that you can tell more about a person in a crisis in 5 minutes than you can tell about them in the rest of their lives.
Wow,
so
that's
if we're
powerful.
prepared, we can also help the people in our community feel safe.
what a great thought.
We got great neighbors, so we want to do that.
Yeah, you know, and there's even that verse in the Bible that says basically a man who does not take care of the needs of his own family is worse than an infidel.
That's right.
And you know, we can think, well, the system will always be there, but we know actually that it won't always be here.
We've seen examples where it's not.
That's right. That's right.
take-
And so looking at this system here, once again, this is something that does run on electricity most of the time, but if immediately electricity goes out, you can't run the generator. If somebody has solar power, that's not working. This is one of the last things you could possibly have. This is something called a simple pump. There's two main brands of pumps in the United States. There's Simple Pump. I think this one's made out of Nevada. It says right on it, made in the USA. And the other one is called Bison Pumps. Bison is out of both Arkansas and Maine, but I think they're actually produced in Arkansas. And these are two solid systems that you could look into for your own family. And one of the great things about these, if you have the right size well, there's two options. Just to clarify, since we're down in the south, they have the standard wellhead where the electrical comes out of the top of it here. And the pipe with the water comes out, so the water is being pumped from the pump down below, pumped out. But I live way up in the north where it's very, very cold, and we cannot pump our water out of the ground or we're going to have frozen solid. We're going to burst our pipes. So we have to end up using a different system. And so where I live, you need at least a 6-inch well casing if you have a pitless adapter, unless you have some kind of smaller pitless adapter that I don't really know about. It could be out there, very well maybe. But in this situation, how big is your well casing?
So our well casing's 4 inches. But the truth is, you can even do a 3-inch. It
Is that right?
requires a more custom setup. But yeah, because all you have to be able to do is slide that pipe down alongside of the other pipe on the inside of the casing. That's all there
Gotcha.
is to it. And it just has to go down to where the water level comes up within the pipe itself. So even though the well itself, for example, may be 90 feet, there's natural pressure within that, and the well may come up, say, within 30 feet.
The static water level.
That's right, the static water level in the pipe.
And so you need to, obviously, just to clarify, if you get one of these, you have to find out your static water level. Where is your water level? And that's a very important point, actually, that if you have a well that's 25 feet or shallower, you can actually get a shallow well pump, and you will save yourself potentially thousands of dollars if you have a very shallow well. But in Frank's case, in my case, we have deeper wells, and as a result of it, we have to get a deep well system, something like this from Simple Pump. But I think Simple Pump may make it, I'm not sure, but I know that Bison Pump makes shallow well pumps. So if you have real shallow water, you're in a great situation. It might cost you a few $100, whereas for someone like us with deeper wells, it's going to cost, for a good system, a few $1,000s, a couple thousand or more, somewhere in there, depending on how deep you're. And I think they can actually, some of the best, these well heads can actually pump up to like 300 to 400 feet. You'd have to check on the particular brand in your situation. But even with a relatively deep well, you can get a hand pump, but you've also got to consider the deeper it is, the more effort it's going to take you to pump that water back up.
And I'd add that the shallow wells, the only issue to deal with, I know down here, for example, is that shallow wells, the water may not necessarily be potable, right? So, But again, if you have to boil the water, that's fine too. You just have to get access to the water.
Exactly.
So a shallow well, even down here, would give you significant amounts of water to pump, but you have to be careful as to whether it's potable or not. Here,
makes sense.
This water is clean and clear, and
you're in good shape in this area. You have great water in this area. I know that. Like we said, this can actually put into a pre-existing well, which is exactly what Frank had done. They came out, and your particular well company was willing to actually do it.
Yeah, we had a couple that just said they wouldn't, or it wasn't necessary. But these guys, and it took a long time. I guess they're custom built. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it took us 10 weeks to get them.
Is that right? Yeah, from the company.
Because of COVID.
That's it.
Because, if you're watching this 10 years from now, you won't even know what we're talking about when it comes to the pandemic.
Yeah, right.
Of the 2020s. But because of that, we had some issues because of manufacturing, and getting raw materials were tougher. But we waited, and we got this put in several months ago.
And everybody, all of the things that have to do with kind of being more self-sufficient are just bought up like crazy at this time. Yes. So it is, and this is just another thought of, when it comes to things, you need to let the Lord lead, but many people think, I'll just wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, and at the very end, then I'll go and, do these kind of things. But the difficulty is, we're seeing that it's much harder during difficult times to do this. And so because everybody, of all different backgrounds, they're like, man, this world just doesn't seem so safe anymore. And so now it becomes harder to get access to things like this. The good news is you still can at this point. And I'm not fear-mongering but it's just a simple reality. Yeah, maybe you could show us how this pump works.
So when it's dry, when it's not primed, it takes, and I've counted, because that's what I do, unfortunately.
He's a mathematician.
So it takes 16 pumps on average.
Okay.
In order to get the water up. Once it's primed, you can usually do it in about 8. And I primed it this morning. Let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There you go. So 8 pumps once it's primed. And I mean, the water is just, you can drink directly out of the well. If you have a beard, it's a little...
Yeah, both of us. Yeah.
It's a little sloppier to do it, but you can drink right out of the well. And the water's good. There's a hardness level to it. I think we're at about 180 parts per million when we test it, but that's just natural solids that are dissolved in the water. But the water itself is, you can taste it. No sulfur, no iron. And not everybody has that. And I'll say that right now.
Yeah.
And if you live in a city, you don't have a well.
Yeah.
And all I can tell you is that there comes a time when we need to consider whether, as times get worse, whether we need to move out of the cities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's, and not everybody can right now, but it's something to plan for and to think about.
It is.
All right, so as you can see, you can get the water pumped up, and it's not a huge flow, but it's a good flow. You can fill a bucket up here pretty quick if you need it. So the other thing is that how do we get water into the house if we need it? So if I want to water the garden, I could take a pail back there. If I want to, or I can even actually hook a hose up and run a hose back if I want to. But if I need to flush the toilets, for example, that's always an issue. I can pump it into a 5-gallon bucket, take the bucket in the house. Maybe I could fill the bathtub. Then the bathtub has a reservoir, and I can load out of that. But if I need water in the rest of the house, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Right. So what I can do is I can take from this, the nipple here, right, and I can connect it to the male receptacle on this side. And what it does then, it feeds the water back into the system. Now, assuming that everything is turned off in the house,
Yeah.
and there's nothing leaking out, I can then pump this, and I can pump.
And that will pump into the pressure tank.
That's right. It'll back up and fill the bladder.
Yep.
Right, the pressure tank with water, and then all I have to do is run it
just like normal in the house.
I watch the valve, and
Yep.
I try to get it up somewhere around 40 to 50 pounds.
Okay.
35 pounds is about the minimum necessary to feed the water in.
Okay.
And then what I do on these systems, this is a water softener, and this one is a charcoal tank. And even though the water's clean,
Yeah.
you know, when you take a shower, for example, your body absorbs an amazing amount of toxins if they're in the water. It comes in through the skin. So when I do it, I just simply hit the bypass on these.
Yeah.
Because what I don't want to do is be wasting my time trying to repressurize water through these tanks, especially in an emergency situation. Plus, these have to be turned off.
Yes.
Because they'll do a back flush, and that back flush can take 30 gallons of water.
So you're going to be pumping like crazy.
Yeah, and it'll empty my whole tank out.
Yeah.
So I pump this up, I fill this with pressure, and that's it. And then if I use water in the house, I'll use it when I run out of those 20, 25 gallons of water that I have. I come out and I pump it up again.
And that's right. And these pressure tanks, just to let you know, there's different size tanks. You can get like a 5-gallon tank. You can get a 100-gallon tank. This one, like we said, is 62. They say you can fill it up around 30% with water. And so if you have a 5-gallon tank, I don't even know if there's 5, but if you had a, you know, if you had a 10-gallon, you're going to have a couple gallons and 3 gallons in there. So, I mean, you might be able to flush your toilet, but that's about it. And so exactly. So you're not going to be able to do much. So a shower, that's going to be a quick shower. You might be able to get a shower off in 3 gallons, but the point is a bigger tank in those situations is going to, because it's going to be work. You know, you'd be coming out here multiple times a day probably and pumping your thing, but hey,
and what else do you have to do in the middle of a crisis?
Exactly, right?
No electricity, no power.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have a TV anyway.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do during that time?
Yeah, the internet's probably going to be down. So there's, I mean, you basically work.
Build strong muscles.
Exactly. You're going to be working. And so doing this, it's more work, but that's better than just hoping somebody comes along and helps you out. You know, you can actually do the work yourself, and like I said, the community may get involved because you may be one of the only people who has an option, and so you can be helping others. And one of the things that since we're down here, you'll get a freeze from time to time, but it's not a massive freeze typically.
The coldest we've ever had it now this year we actually hit 26 degrees.
Is that right?
I know if you're up north, you're going, ooh. So I'm not trying to compare it to the difficulty. I'm just trying to say when you have an above the ground setup. But it was for a limited period of time, and all I do is I turn the water on in the house on a low run, so the water keeps going. But I think it was the first or second year we moved here, we were down in like 20, 21 degrees.
Wow.
For a long time, and all I did, I brought actually an electric blanket out here, and I put the electric blanket over everything, and then set up a heat light, and I plugged them both in, and
it did the trick.
Yeah, that did the trick.
Nice,
you know,
nice.
But we've had, I think, 5 freezes this year, but none of them have been extensive or long.
Gotcha.
And that's what it is. It's not just the temperature. It's how long that temperature stays at that.
Yes, and once again, that like me, I live up north, and because I live up north, this system outside like this wouldn't work. So I have the pressure tank. It actually is in my basement. The well casing is actually maybe 60, 80 feet in front of our house. And so you don't have these pipes running above ground, and when it's cold up there, they actually run them underground. And that's why you need you need to make sure it works in your region where you are. But the other thing to think about is, if you live way up north like I do, it could actually damage the system and break the pipes if you didn't do something about that. And what they do is, I don't know if it was done here, but where we are, they actually, so just to explain how this works, below the wellhead here, below in the casing, there are PVC pipes that run down to the water, and they have a sucker rod that goes up through the pipes, and every pump is bringing that sucker rod up and down and pushing that water up. But as that takes place, if you would stop, it would actually just stay in the pipe, and then this could actually burst because the pressure of the water as it freezes. But what they do is, in that first pipe, that first PVC pipe, a hole is drilled in it, a weep hole, and what that does is that makes it so that when you're done doing it, the water will actually just kind of drain out so that it won't freeze within the casing. So if you are in a cold enough region, you want to make sure to do that. And they actually, I think even Simple Pump will do that. They may actually have it pre-drilled there for you. You have to find out what your the freeze line is, because your freeze line might be down 12 inches, 36 inches. It can freeze a certain amount down, but at some point it will never freeze. So you do need to make sure that you know that when you're getting your system taken care of, or they'll just drill a hole a little further down probably. But
because it's amazing that water expands when it heats and when it freezes.
yeah, isn't that interesting?
That's like weird.
It is.
Nothing else does that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that is very strange. Yeah.
You'd expect water would contract, and we'd never have these problems, but
Yeah.
you know.
So we just wanted to show you, and it's just a nice thing to, and once again, it'd be great if Frank never has to use the system, and you say, well, then it's a waste of money. Once again, we don't think that way with many aspects of our lives, you know, healthcare, or, you know, like, you know, sure, I pay every month, and I've never gotten a dime back for my, you know, paying for like insurance. I'm on one of these MediShare things, but still, I've never gotten anything back. So would you say, well, that's worthless? Well, no, you know, in catastrophic situations,
right.
You want to make sure to be covered. And in this situation, this is basically, unless you're really fully off the grid, some people fully live off this. I was at my Amish friend's house, and that's what they had. They've lived this way. They grew up this way. And so this is the only option for them. And so you could just live, if you're in a situation where there's no way to get any kind of electricity, you could live off a system like this. You can pump water into your house. You can run your house like normal, except for you got to come out from time to time and do that. But there's also systems on some of these where you can hook up some kind of electrical system that will even pump the system itself. So
actually, there is one you can hook up to this even that uses a 12-volt battery.
Is that right?
Yep, and all it does is it's like a vacuum, so it's like a regular pump.
Okay.
Like a sump pump.
Yep,
It works in the same way, but you know, if you're out of power, you're out of power.
Exactly.
And that's the whole purpose of this, is to be able to do it. And again, it's just not that complicated.
No.
It's not that hard to pump it, and you know, the water comes out freely, even when it's not primed. It only takes, you know, a little over a dozen and a half pumps.
And there's something real fulfilling about knowing you have access, or I don't know, just comforting to know you've got water. So one last thing that I'm thinking about is I have one other option for you. So something like this, like I said, if you have a very shallow pump, it's going to cost you several $100. In a situation like this, it's going to be $2,000 or more probably at the lower end if it's a deeper well. But I have an option for those who just simply don't have that money, or you already have a well drilled like I do and you can't, because it's too small of a casing, you can't put one in. I have another option for you in catastrophic situations that only cost you $100, and I'm going to do a video on that in the future. So if you want to see that, make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell notifications. And Frank, I just want to thank you for taking the time to show us your system here.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it very much.
And God bless everybody, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.